I'm going to make a chocolate tart today. For this recipe, for the pastry, I am using a 24 centimeter tart pan and 1.5 cups of plain flour or 225 grams of plain flour. Then I have half a cup of caster sugar. Then the butter 140 grams, 1 egg, and I'm using beads to bake the pastry. If you like to add chocolate in the pastry, please feel free to add chocolate, cocoa powder, then it becomes a dark chocolate color. So after doing the pastry, I'm going to do the filling. For the filling, I am using 2 whole eggs with 2 egg yolks. Then I have quarter a cup of caster sugar, 250 grams of dark cooking or baking chocolate, and I have 200 grams butter. I'm going to melt this. I'm going to leave the filling to do later. I'm going to do the pastry now. If you are using a food processor, you can use the pulse movement, but if you are using it by hand, because the butter is hard, we are using chilled butter, so use a pastry cutter to cut the butter and do it by hand, or use your fingers. But when you use your fingers, the butter melts off because of the heat. So I'm going to add the flour, butter, sugar and the egg, and I'm going to use the pulse movement to mix the pastry. Once the dough is smooth and like breadcrumbs, add it into a bowl and with your fingers make it to a ball. If you have a pastry mat, use the pastry mat to roll this to a circle, or you can use baking paper. In between 2 baking papers you can roll this. I'm going to do 12-inch round to suit my tart pan. So I'm going to roll this with the baking paper on top of the pastry mat. Like that, slowly make a circle to 12-inch. And I forgot to tell you, if your working environment is hot, make sure you refrigerate this at least 15 minutes before you start working. Now slowly release the baking paper or the pastry mat. Then take the one baking paper onto your hand and put it on the tart pan slowly and press it down without breaking the pastry. And after doing that, take the paper off. After putting it onto the pan, press it nicely and press the edges and slowly remove the paper out. After taking the paper out, use a fork and prick all over the pastry like this. That will prevent the pastry coming up. So after doing that, use a little knife and trim all the edges and refrigerate this for 30 minutes before you bake this. I left the tart in the fridge for about 30 minutes. Now it's settled down. So I'm going to put the foil on top and bake this on 180 fan forced. If you are doing it on a normal oven, it's 200 degrees. And bake this about 15 minutes. If you don't have baking beads, you can use rice or even some kind of grain like beans. So I'm going to bake this in the oven 180 fan forced. While you are doing the pastry in the oven, you can melt the chocolate at this point. I'm going to put it on simmering water and melt this. I took the pastry out. Now I'm going to slowly take the beads out and bake the pastry again about 15 minutes. While melting the chocolate, into another bowl I am going to add the butter and sugar, then 2 whole eggs, and 2 egg yolks. Divide the eggs and take the yolk only. Two egg yolks, and I am going to put this on simmering water and whisk this for 15 minutes on simmering water. Never put this on boiling water. If you put this on boiling water, what will happen? The eggs will get cooked and you can't do the rest. So keep on whisking for 15 minutes now. When the egg and butter mix is nice and fluffy and even like a golden color, add the melted chocolate into the egg mix and whisk it while adding the chocolate, and like that add the whole lot of chocolate into the bowl. Now take the tart shell out and slowly pour the chocolate mix into the tart shell. And into the oven, but you have to reduce the temperature 20 degrees and make sure that it is 160 now at this time, and cook this about 10 minutes until the chocolate settle down, and leave it in the oven. Switch off the oven and leave it in the oven about 30 minutes. Once the tart is cold, dust with extra cocoa powder. It will give a nice color, not much, but cover it with extra cocoa powder, and you can serve this with cream or even ice cream. And now I am going to put this in the fridge about 2 to 3 hours.